Welcome to Nailing the Apex. It's another Grand Prix week, and obviously we've got it's the Spanish Grand Prix this week. Very excited about that. But Tim, the news today, and by the way, hi Tim, how are you?
I'm good,
I just want to get to the news so bad. I'm sorry.
No, do it. Let's dive right in.
Alpine is considering abandoning its works Renault engine in Formula One from 2026. The team has opened talks with rival manufacturers and may become a customer team. It was also reported that Red Bull were one of the teams that they had talked to, Red Bull Ford powertrains, but of course, Red Bull, I guess it was just whatever the deal was going to be too complicated. This is, Tim, a huge reversal because Renault used to have the best engine on the grid. Multiple-time world championship winner, and multiple teams used to use Renault engines, and now Renault themselves may not use their own engine. There's so much here. Where do you want to start?
Man, first of all, like Jonathan Noble getting that story out, very impressive. It is something I had heard about back during the Miami Grand Prix, but I kind of like didn't believe it because Adam, if you think about it, it doesn't make any sense when you have a manufacturer who comes in to make Formula One engines, just decide we're not going to do that anymore, and we're going to buy engines from our competitors.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe it, man. I just can't. Like, oh my God.
What is it? I mean, this is a team that's split over two countries.
True.
So, and this is something you've talked about before. Explain to people what goes on in France and what goes on in England.
So in Viry, France, that's where they make their power units for Formula One. Mm-hmm. And then in Enstone, so over in the UK, that's where they make the car. Now, you have a group working in France that's not really communicating with the group that's working over in the UK. There's been dysfunction in there for years. Otmar Safnauer brought in to try and figure that part of it out. He gets let go. They bring in Bruno Famin. And now, all of a sudden, you've got a car for this season that is, it's one of the worst on the grid. It's overweight, slow, and you have two extremely talented drivers, and you have a boatload of personnel who are working their asses off behind the scenes to get this car on the racetrack every single weekend. If you're Renault, you needed to do this a long time ago, Adam, bringing both of them together underneath one factory and do it that way. This is an auto manufacturer who came in, bought a team that was struggling, rebranded it, reshaped it, started making their own engines for them. Bring on Daniel Ricciardo. You have a bit of success. You see a bit of light there at the end of that tunnel. They're starting to look kind of competitive, and then they just take a giant crap.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, okay, well, why is that? Why would they be struggling? And I think a lot of it has to do, and if we go back to like what we talk about with Ferrari, because you and I have talked about this before, where you have that upper management, the executives who work for the OEM, who then come down and they think they know how to run a race team, and they get too involved, and then you kind of just mess it all up, and you just throw a massive wrench into this giant cog, and it just seizes, and it doesn't produce work anymore. Good work. Mm-hmm. And that's extremely frustrating when you look at other personnel who want to get involved in Formula One. Mm-hmm. Right? We talked about Andretti before. Desperately want to get into Formula One.
Can make the sport better. Can obviously make the sport better.
Yeah, potentially. Then you take a look at, okay, you've got, if you're in Formula One, you're supposed to have, and you're an engine, like you're an OEM, so you're Renault, you're supposed to be making your own engines.
Yeah.
Like, where is the marketing philosophy behind this, right? Where is it? Because if you're going to tell me that in 2026, you're not building your own engines. You're going to go buy a Mercedes and jam it into the back of your car. What are we doing here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't make sense, Adam. Like, I love Renault as a Formula One team. I have, Fernando Alonso, who was one of my favorite drivers, watching him race as a kid and then watching him win championships with that car, the car color combination. It's still to this day one of my favorite, Formula One cars of all time. 2005, 2006 Renault. That's still one of my favorite F1 cars. And then just to see where they were and now where they are, it's just extremely disappointing. And I really wish that they could find a way of turning this thing around, because it's kind of like I've been watching it like decay for so long, Adam. Like, it's just been
well. And Tim, is it just eliminating the fact that there is rumored tension between the Enstone team and the team that makes the engine? The fact that you're splitting a team over 2 countries with a body of water in between them makes things really difficult as well. But you have to have a team in England because that's where all the talent live. So you kind of want to keep the team there because a lot of the engineers live there, don't want to leave, want to stay there.
That's true.
There's a lot here, and it's disappointing because this team seemed to have a direction, but they just at the corporate level cannot get it together. That's what seems to be the case here.
100%.
Why?
100%.
What is it about? Why is this corporation, which is such a big one, right? It isn't. You have to remember, Renault is like the second biggest auto manufacturer in the world.
Huge.
So huge, and not huge in North America, but huge everywhere else.
Yeah.
You have to understand that if you've ever worked for a mega corporation, like a big corporation, you know that the wheels of power are slow and painful and boring and all the things. But this race team has significant history. It's got world championships, and they are denigrating their own brand. They are making it worse. And the switch to Alpine, I think, Tim, while somewhat good in theory, to me always never made sense either, because there's no connection. It doesn't make Alpine, the brand, look good. When all the top talent are leaving, they tried to build a road car around Fernando Alonso's name and then promptly lost them. Like, it's just, there's been mistake after mistake after mistake. And the team that keeps paying the price is not the corporate team, it's the race team. The race team is the one that they keep firing people from and keep losing people from. And they have all the money and the resources to do it, but it seems like none of the direction. Is there any way that you can arrest this fall from grace that they've seen over the last couple of years?
I do. Like, I honestly think like there is a path forward, for this team and for the auto manufacturer as a whole, and to stay in Formula One. Bring your team together. Like, bring them together. You got to put everything under one roof. And you got to take this thing seriously if you're Renault. That means investment. You've got to invest. Like, you've got to invest, man. Like, I get it from the standpoint that behind the scenes for the 2026 regulation, it is very complicated, the engine regulation. But you've got to invest in it if you want to take this thing seriously. Like, you're literally talking about one of the biggest sports in the world. You have a marketing exercise here that can work. Think about Mercedes, Adam. Like, go back to, like, when you were young, was Mercedes like a young, cool car, or was it something that was geared towards our parents?
They were old people retiree cars that were 4 doors and
100%.
And kind of boring.
100%. Get into Formula One, take advantage of it. You start kicking some ass, and like, boom, Adam, you've got now a car manufacturer who's able to push product towards the younger demographic, and the younger demographic are buying it. They're loving AMGs, which was a smart move by Mercedes, side note, to take that over.
Really smart.
But buying cars with the AMG branding on it, like, just genius, like, absolute marketing genius. If you're Alpine, you have to look at that, Adam, and say, what did they do, and how do we do it? and then maybe do it better. Like you rebrand your team to Alpine. You leave Renault. You go to Alpine, a car that no one has ever heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Sold maybe 4,000 units last year. Like maybe.
That's it.
Like what are we doing? Like it's.
Oh my God.
It's.
I don't know. Here's how
I gotta calm myself down because this. This
is good. I like this.
It's just that this. Like, I love the team. I love Renault. Like I was saying earlier, I was a huge fan as a kid. It's really tough to watch. I really want this team to do well, and I really want to see them succeed. But there are just so many different things when you look at this deep down that, like, on a business sense, Adam, it doesn't make sense. Just sell the team.
Right. And is this Andretti's jump in, do you think?
Could be Andretti, could be anybody, right? Like it could be anybody.
Well, apparently right? Hyundai's interested. Apparently they're aiming. And
Geely's interested too. Like they've been sniffing around from what I've heard. Like,
and BMW is a name too that I think will emerge at some point. They were a huge player in Formula One before the crash in 2008. And I feel like why wouldn't they come back? Why wouldn't they, especially when you see how much ground the Mercedes brand has gained on Porsche and gained on Audi and gained on BMW. There's a reason Audi's getting in. There's a reason. Audis have taken on the mantle of what Mercedes used to be, which, they have their TT Coupe and they have their thing, but they're not like known as great sports cars unless you're talking about the R8. And they discontinued that. They just stopped making them. They were cool cars though, really cool. My point in all of this is, it seems it's kind of sad, just sell the team, but it's also a missed opportunity for revenue because when they had multiple teams, Tim, grabbing the Renault engine, I think McLaren were running Renault at one point. I know that Red Bull were running Renault, so that's at least two, and there were probably others. That's significant dollars through the door every year. Hey, we're just going to buy your engine, no matter how good or bad it is. Here's free money. You're developing the engine anyway.
100%, Adam. It's like the Mercedes, like I just said with Mercedes, it's literally like the Mercedes blueprint where, okay, we have other teams on the grid who need engines. We'll just sell our incredible engines to them and we'll still win on the track because we're going to put the best minds on the technical side behind our cars to make sure that aerodynamically our cars are still kicking ass, even if our engines are going to kick some ass as well. So you look at Mercedes, this holistic approach that they take to everything, and Toto Wolff, you got to thank him for that because part of his idea. So that's where you lose me with Alpine, Renault. Mm-hmm. It's that never really took that part of it seriously, never really looked at what other teams were doing, other OEMs that got involved in Formula One were doing. You made a great point with Audi, Adam. Perfect point. I mean, obviously, new manufacturers are coming in 2026 because they like the engine regulation and they think it's something that they can take and put into their road-going cars. But at the same time, they see the place that Formula One is in at the moment. It is in a super strong position. It is probably at its healthiest it has ever been. It's the biggest it's ever been. And you have Audi, Ford, Cadillac wants to get involved, obviously, with Andretti. Honda's sticking around. That's great news. So they notice that this is not only a great sport for us to develop tech, but also as a marketing exercise. Like, the first thing you see when you drive into some of these racetracks are car manufacturers advertising their brand. Mm-hmm. Very first thing, man. Driving over the bridge, get to Canadian Grand Prix, first thing you see is Audi's display. Audi put on a nice, beautiful display there. That's brilliant. Like, what are we doing? Like, why are we not seeing that with Renault? And that just tells me, Adam, that they just are not serious about this.
It's vision, Tim, to me. Vision. And you look at what happened with the Mercedes team. Do you think that happens if Toto Wolff isn't a part owner? Here's the difference, right? Toto owns a good chunk of that race team and therefore is able to say to Mercedes, no, I know you're a big corporation, but we have to do this to win at racing. And by the way, when we win at racing, it's going to make you look really good on the sales side. You're going to be able to put Lewis Hamilton's name for the last 10 years all over everything. And before that, hey, we got this kid, Nico Rosberg. His father was an F1 racer. Oh, and by the way, we just went and hired Michael Schumacher out of retirement, right? Like, talk about brilliant in that manner. And, you know, what they do with their next driver, whether it's Kimi Antonelli or it's Valtteri Bottas, they still have George Russell, who is going to eventually start winning some races here. I think he's next up with like Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc to challenge, obviously, Max Verstappen. I don't think anybody's surprised by that. They're in a bit of a rebuild phase with Lewis Hamilton leaving. But that was going to come anyway. Lewis was going to retire at some point. Toto's vision, as much as Christian Horner gives him crap for not being a race guy or an engineering guy, Toto's a business guy. He's brilliant. And he has turned that team into one of the most marketable teams in Formula One history. And what Renault does not have is somebody with the kind of, not only the kind of sway that Toto has, but the ownership stake to say, no. We're not doing that. That's stupid. Because everybody who is hired by Renault is hired by Renault and therefore can be fired, right? And I feel bad for the athletes fund with Ryan Reynolds and a couple of guys from the Chiefs. I think Patrick Mahomes is in on that. They all invested in Alpine last year. How are they feeling about that investment right now? You know, not that the franchise has gone down, but it's not like you can go around rocking an Alpine hat and feel good about the results, right? So all that said, I think that they were lacking a person with not only the business acumen, but the race acumen and the sway within the company to make this happen. Vision is a really hard thing to find. You can find people who are good at putting cars together. You can find good racers. You can find good team principals and team strategists and all that. But vision for what this race team does for this brand is very, very hard to find. And, you know, it's why Christian Horner was so heavily defended by half of the Red Bull global team this year, because there was infighting there. And that's because Christian has done really well for them on the business side. He's given them championships, and that's made Red Bull, the energy drink. Where nobody, it's like, you know how, it's called a tissue, but we call it a Kleenex because they're so ubiquitous. Oh, just give me a Kleenex, even if it's not a Kleenex, right? That's what Red Bull is to energy drinks, man. I know that Monster sponsors Lando Norris, but like no one's like, oh man, give me a Monster and Jaeger, or give me a Monster and vodka. No, it's a vodka and Red Bull, right? That's how a part of the vernacular they are. And I think what Renault and Alpine, by doing this, are just not understanding, and frankly never going to accomplish if they keep going this route, is they'll never realize the financial benefits. They can spend the same as all these other teams. They don't have to spend more than Mercedes. They don't have to spend more than Ferrari. They just have to spend it wisely. And Tim, they would do extremely well. If Renault won regular championships or were in the fight, they could probably launch the brand in North America. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, that's 100%. How big it is.
100%. Yeah, that was going to be my other point, Adam, is the fact that, you know, you have, even if you wanted to sidestep and move Renault out of the picture just from the branding marketing exercise, and you want to bring in Alpine, which is fine, but that goal should be to try and get Alpine into the North American market, get it into the Canadian market, and see what happens, right? I haven't heard of any initiatives to make that push, right? And that's a bit of a problem, right? That's a bit of an issue. Who's to say that? I mean, heck, let's say Cadillac does come on board in 2028. You're going to tell me that Cadillac is just going to advertise and push the product in just the North American market? I got news for you. Cadillac will go to Europe and they will try and push the product overseas. 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
So when we take a look at this from that perspective, that part of it hasn't even been achieved, or I haven't heard of them even trying to do that. And so
Yep.
I just sit here and I say, well, why? Like, what was the point of that? Like,
Yeah.
why did you do that? Just leave it as Renault. Just leave it as Renault, and then try to make that push with Renault in the North American market.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I agree.
And then, we talked about at the start, Adam, about Red Bull and 2026, the Red Bull Ford powertrains. And simply put, they would not be able to give them an engine. They just wouldn't. It'd be way too complicated for them at the moment. They're just trying to take care of 2 teams, let alone a 3rd team. And that's where their main focus is, where it should be at the moment. And once they get that online, and let's say it's competitive at the door, then consider, selling off your engine, have someone else buy parts of it to you. I have a feeling if this were to go through, Aston Martin's probably going to be the one who's going to be pressured to sell them a power unit. It would probably most likely be the Honda, obviously. And that's fine. I mean, that would be good for Aston Martin to get some, side revenue coming through the door. But it just, the optics of it just doesn't.
No.
If I'm Honda, like, let's say you're Honda, like, you're Honda and you're putting your Honda engine in the back of an Alpine.
Yeah.
Or
it's weird.
in the back of a Renault, whatever you would do with the team, whether you rebrand it or whatever.
Well, I think Honda and Renault should just kiss and let Honda buy the team again. Bring Honda back into the sport.
Yeah, you could do that too, right? You could do that too. Well, I mean, that ship has passed. Obviously, they have deals now set up with Aston Martin, and they still have their current deal with Red Bull. But I mean, you do have other people on the sidelines, Adam, who would love to take this team over.
Yeah. I just hope Andretti doesn't. Is that weird? I hope they don't. I want them to be the 11th team. I'm sick of this crap. I want them to come in and be that. Like, I really do. And I know likely it's like Andretti just buys them and then we move on. But I just, I want this to be something where maybe Hyundai buys them or Honda buys them or Andretti buys them, whatever. But I'm dying I want there to be a 22 car grid again. That's my agenda on this one. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed. Now,
for sure. No,
in
totally
that
agree.
ranting and raving, I completely forgot. We had a secondary topic we needed to talk about. And then I have something I want to finish off on Haas. So let's get to the secondary one, which was what? What were we going to talk about? Because I have I'm drawing a blank.
Red Bull and Constructors Championship.
Yes.
And whether or not that, I think you and I feel that they could potentially lose this thing, which, I mean, at the beginning of the season, Adam, if we rewind, you and I literally talked about the fact that we're going to have a Constructors Championship battle. That's what's going to happen. And they're going to be pushed. Now we're at the point where this thing, Adam, is a lot closer than I think any of us thought it was going to be. Would you agree with that?
I would say it is. And I'd say, Tim, that Sergio Perez's performance over the last 3 races has not been good.
Definitely been an issue.
And an odd time to announce an extension. I'm just going to say it's weird. Also
agree. At the moment, though, Red Bull 301 points in the constructors, and then Ferrari's just behind them, 252, and then I think McLaren's sneaking up. But McLaren's at like 212, I think it is, like coming into this weekend here and at the Spanish Grand Prix. And I honestly, when I look at Red Bull Racing. And just currently where they're at in their form, I mean, the car needs an upgrade. It needs, it needs a big upgrade. But the question remains is that how much wind tunnel time do they have left? Like, how much investment did they put into the initial car that we saw that was on the track in Bahrain, and they've just added bits and pieces to it as we've moved along, where we we saw McLaren arrive to the grid with a car that kind of looked eerily similar to last year's car. And then fast forward to Miami, and this thing is like
different,
totally different. It's like, that's what they probably wanted to start the season with, Adam. And it's like, they just never had the time to catch up. Something similar to what Aston Martin did when they brought their upgrade to Imola. That was most likely what I thought they wanted to start the season with. But again, getting lost last year in a direction has that snowball effect. And so you gradually start to add bigger components, where I think you look at Red Bull, it's like, let's throw everything at this thing right away, see what we got, and just hold on, right? I don't think they even thought teams were going to make the steps that they have been able to make. And that's got me curious.
Okay. Well, okay. Now, I think it's obvious that the Constructors Championship is under threat. I think Lando completely admitted that. He was like, "Listen, it's between Ferrari and us right now," and he was right. And Lando's a guy that's had points in every single race this year, so he's been Mr. Consistency all the way through. And him and Oscar have finished every race this year, which they're the only team to have both drivers do that, which is pretty impressive. So, Tim, is it possible, not just the Constructors, but is the Drivers' Championship maybe under threat too?
I mean, some folks seem to think that it's not, Adam. I mean, I think like Charles Leclerc in P2, Lando Norris P3. I think Leclerc is 138 points, and then Lando is right there with 131. For a driver like Carlos Sainz, is it realistic for him to probably pop into the picture? I doubt it. I do, however, think that if McLaren can bring another step forward with their car, one that's going to be bigger than whatever Red Bull brings, if they bring it at all in the next few races. And then same goes with Ferrari, right, Adam? I mean, like, I think they still need to take a step forward with their car as well, albeit they did take a pretty sizable one in Imola. I still think McLaren and Ferrari still have another big step to take. And let's say it works, and Red Bull hasn't really brought anything to sort of keep up, because maybe when we look at it, and we talked to Gunther Steiner about this, it's the fact that there's only so much runway left to develop these cars, develop this regulation. So it's kind of like, well, maybe, and Adrian Newey kind of said it as well, where it's like they're already bumping up against that. They don't feel that there's much more left to unlock from this regulation. So let's say that McLaren, Ferrari are able to take a step. Let's say that they are able to find even more performance, like not a ton, but maybe, a tenth here, a tenth there. Who's to say that both Leclerc and Norris can't push Max Verstappen for a driver's title? We're going to go to Spain here, Adam, and that's probably going to be Red Bull territory, and they may be hard to beat there. But from there on out, like Austria is like Red Bull's like hunting ground. But
yes,
I would argue to the fact that you have these other two teams that are just as good as Red Bull in corners that are representative of other corners with Austria, where these teams have done well at. And then you go to Silverstone, could possibly be a Red Bull track. But then if McLaren takes a step, they're in it because they're great in high speed. They're now great in low speed. And if
which is a surprise to them. Yeah, well, that's the part that got me. McLaren were like, "Oh, we weren't ready to be good in low speed." Like what?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I think a lot of things have happened over the past month and a half that a lot of people weren't prepared for.
Yeah,
simply put. And now we're in this situation where, we're definitely in a constructor's battle, but we could potentially be in a driver's one as well. Like all it takes is Max to screw up 2 races. And that's
100%. And Tim, like I look at this and I think this actually dovetails perfectly with the Haas thing I wanted to bring up, because Io Komatsu said that Spain is really the first track that they think that they're going to be great on high-speed corners, because there hasn't been a lot of high-speed corners through the first leg of this of this year.
That's a good point.
And so, yeah, I thought that was interesting because Haas have done a great job on one lappers, especially Nico Hülkenberg. A great job, great qualifying this year. And obviously, if a Haas car is going to get points, we're expecting it to be between 8 and 10, right? Like 8th and 10th place, not 8 and 10 points. For the cars that are great, and we will talk a little bit more about the Spanish Grand Prix in the second episode this week because it'll be after media day and there'll be plenty of quotes and that sort of thing. But when I look at this, I look at a team like Haas. I look at a team like, Aston Martin. How close are they going to be? And I look at these teams catching up, and Haas and Aston Martin shouldn't be close, right? Like, I'm sure Lawrence Stroll would hate that. But I look at a team like Red Bull, and James Vowles, who is not a stupid man, said their upgrades seem like downgrades. And then Christian Horner snapped back and was like, well, our upgrades are better than our downgrades are better than your upgrades.
James Allison said that. James
Allison. Yeah. Sorry, not James Vowles. James Allison, also a Mercedes guy, but okay, we get it, Christian. Like you got thin skin. You have to shoot back at everything. But the thing that I'm looking at here is which teams can surprise? Like if Red Bull take another step back or forget it, they just stay where they're at. Who's going to surprise? We got McLaren, we already know is fast. Ferrari, we already know is fast. Mercedes all of a sudden is fast.
That's your team right there. It's your
Mercedes,
surprise.
huh?
I think so anyways. It really does look like they've unlocked a lot of potential with this car, with their new front wing, front suspension that they brought to Canada, new front wing that was brought to Monaco. It does look like they have found something there. Now, again, we did talk about this after Canada, where Canada could be like this outlier of a track where, okay, well, maybe, they're good here, but are they going to be good when they go to Austria? Are they going to be good when they go to Azerbaijan? Like, those are the question marks that people just don't know. But my thing is that with Barcelona, with this track that's coming up in Spain, Adam, is the perfect track to judge and take a hard look at where everybody is, because it has the perfect mix of your high speed, your low speed, your min speed, your slow to medium high, like slow to medium corner, and same with medium to high corner. It has a mix of simply everything, braking as well. And so this track paints a really great picture for where everyone is going to be.
Yep.
That's why I say, like, hey, this is probably going to be a track for Red Bull, because they actually, they have a car within reason that handles all of that. Maybe not the bumps too well, but again, we will get a better understanding of where everyone is going to stack up at this point in the season, even though we're only what are we? We're third through. We're going to get a better idea of like just how much these teams have closed in on Red Bull.
Right.
Which is exciting. That's absolutely exciting.
This is what we've been asking for, and this is what you predicted we would be at, Tim. So 100%. I just want to give you your flowers. Okay, so you know what? We'll leave the show there for now. And we're going to come back with a bigger one on Thursday when we get some, everybody's going to they all went on like little mini vacations, and there's TikToks of Lando walking around Monaco and all that stuff. People are following these. I feel bad because they don't even have paparazzi following them anymore. It's just fans.
Oh my God. I saw that on TikTok.
I'm like, he's just going for groceries, man. Leave the man alone.
That's what I was thinking too. Like, leave the poor guy alone. There was one TikTok that I saw, and it was like this one person following Lando around the entire day around Monaco. And I'm like, yo, like boundaries.
That's weird.
Boundaries, right?
That's
like
weird.
Boundaries. Like just give the man some space. If you see him going into the casino, don't stand there and wait for 5 hours for him to come back out so you can keep him like,
oh yeah,
like relax, like leave the guy, give the guy some room. But I mean, man, quite the lifestyle, hey? Like, think
cool.
back like 5 years, Adam. Like these guys weren't rock stars like they are now.
No, it's cool.
You know?
It's very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
What a
it's
great
very
life.
cool.
I would kill for a life like that.
Oh,
Oh, just
yeah.
leaving my gorgeous condo, and I'm gonna get into my. Well, I think is it Lando that's got the Lamborghini Miura, like just the old like original.
Oh yeah, he's got like an old original one from like a really long time ago.
Beautiful
I don't know
car.
how he got his hands on that thing either. I guess
they're actually not crazily priced. I looked one up, and they're like $100,000. Like, I mean, for a race car driver, like they're not crazy. They're just a pain in the ass to fix, apparently. Like, you know, but they're beautiful, beautiful cars.
I had never thought I would see the day, Adam, where like, you know, these guys are like followed around like that. Like, it's like. What?
It's you're celebrity. You're celebrity now.
It's celebrity now. Yeah, exactly. Where it's like I still approach these guys like, you know, they're
just back in the
drivers.
day, Schumacher was a celebrity. But
yeah,
like, were people following Damon Hill around?
No.
Were people following Heinz Harald Franzen around?
No.
Ralf Schumacher? Maybe in Germany. But like, no, not at all.
Like, yeah, you look at it, it's like Alex Albon's like getting followed around.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And Bottas is like,
yeah,
he's like a celebrity, dude. He's like, people love him.
Yeah, well, how could you not love Valtteri? He's the best.
For sure. But like, again, you go back like 5 years ago or 6, even maybe a little bit longer. It's like, there's just no way, right? They're just
no.
Like
exactly.
now it's like Valtteri couldn't come to Canada. Like everybody would know who he is. And like same with the States. He like has to go all the way out to the middle of like Colorado to go biking so you can like not get bugged. Like it's wild, man. It's
amazing.
Wild.
It's
it's definitely cool.
Well, Tim,
thanks, man. Yeah.
We'll see you Thursday morning, sir.
Sounds good, bud. Thanks again.
All right. Take care.